Department of Labor. Christopher?
Absolutely. Can you all see my screen okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Excellent. All right. So today what I want to go through is kind of highlight. We did earlier this year a couple big surveys, first of job seekers, or first rather of businesses, and then a follow-up of job seekers. And I think kind of in the world we're all kind of living in today, there's a lot of questions, there's a lot of changes happening, and I wanted to kind of walk through what we're hearing directly from businesses and job seekers about kind of the changing world of work, the changing dynamic in the workplace, and then also kind of talk through from the Department of Labor standpoint a number of the big initiatives that we are working on here, and then happy to discuss, take your questions, and that sort of thing. So I'll start with a just quick overview. So again, earlier this year, we heard from about 2,000 businesses across the state, heard from representation from 8,000 different business locations, so quite a representative survey. And then our follow-up to job seekers was more than 4,100 job seekers who responded. A heat map on the right side of your screen shows where the businesses had responded. So quite a representation from both surveys. Both covered every single county, obviously every region of the state, and all the major industry groups out there, and really, I think, help tell a story of what we're seeing in the headlines. From the business perspective, there were three real key themes that came out. The first was that the need today in the business community is both of entry-level workers, but also of skilled workers. So in the past, you used to have this pathway if you come in at the entry and you work your way up, but we had such a state of leaving from highly skilled positions that people retired, people got different jobs, people because of COVID aren't returning to those jobs. So you're lacking a lot of entry level work and a lot of highly skilled work. So businesses are really feeling pulled in their hiring needs today. There's also the extreme need, and I have I think a really illustrative slide on this, for a stronger workplace connections broadly in all of our different regions out there going on. And the last is we have to do a better job of supporting businesses through the recruitment process, enlightening them on best practices, and not just businesses, but anyone who employs people. And I think anyone who plays in that sandbox really has a role to kind of reshape the process in how we do things. One interesting statistic is that there is in the future, one of the questions we asked about the business's future plans for automation. And about a third of businesses said that they're going to be in the next couple years doing some kind of digital automation. So this was sales process automation. This is any kind of customer service management, customer relations management, automation, those kind of things. And 10% of businesses said they're focusing on physical automation, robotic automation. This tended to fall more on the manufacturing side, so CNC machines, palletizers, robotic welding machines, those type of technologies. But certainly, as we get people into the workforce, a lot more technology, a lot more automation, and then obviously the support for all of those systems is going to be needed into the future. Asked a lot of questions about recruiting workers, and kind of, as I said at the beginning, a big need on both levels, as you see here. So we broke it down into three big buckets: manufacturing, construction, healthcare, and then all other industries. And it just was because of the volume we received from the different industries. But you can see in each category, so in the manufacturing construction category, so you have labor, you have machine operators for more entry level, but then it goes up to engineer, machinist, tool makers, project managers, more highly skilled positions. Same thing in healthcare. You have entry level, nursing, nurses' aides, and then up to RNs, probably one of the top jobs right now needed out there in the medical, and then all the way down to psychiatrists, very highly specialized, highly skilled positions needed there. In other industries, same thing. Entry level and fully skilled as well. So the need is really spread across the board. And another consistent answer from businesses was the why roles are hard to fill. And it really came down to not having enough qualified candidates. So this was not having people with the right education, not having people with the right level of experience, not having people with the right kind of credential, all of those sort of answers. Half of businesses who responded said that was the problem. For some businesses, you'll see a little bit lower down, it was just getting any kind of applicants. This tended to skew more toward entry-level jobs. But some of the supplemental benefits that are still around, like unemployment, that was still quite an issue for some businesses that they had identified. And then the nature of work. Businesses said it was just too difficult to find people for such rigorous hands-on work, or that the market was just too competitive, or that their shifts and the schedule didn't necessarily align appropriately with what job seekers had wanted. They also identified some barriers. So you have someone, you want to bring them on board, but what are the kind of barriers preventing that hire? And again, lack of experience. So some of them make a great position, but they just don't have the experience. I can't bring them on board just yet. That they were lacking from the candidates that initiative, the self-motivation, often through the process of hiring alone, getting people to show up to a secondary interview, or hiring someone and not having them show up to the first day or even the second day of work was actually pretty common out there, and something we've heard anecdotally, but I mean statistically, pretty high numbers from businesses on a lot of that. Wanting to bring someone in, offering them a job, and then that disconnect between the desire of wage expectations and then what you can actually offer them as a salary. Transportation, childcare, common problems we've seen for a number of years. And then again, training, education, scheduling, a number of other issues, drug screening, driver's license, that we've seen in the past as well. We ask businesses as well, and I think this is an interesting point. What are the tools you use to find your talent today? So, like, where are you? And it really is across the board. So you can see the vast majority of businesses find Indeed, find their own networks of referrals through current employees, word of mouth to be huge, their own website. Department of Labor's services, about half of them, social media, and then some third-party recruiters, career fairs, and then direct recruitment on college campuses. We then asked, okay, great, you're using all that. What's actually working? And this was very clear what's actually working. The word of mouth, their current referral network through employees, and Indeed. And then it drop off to their other things, social media, their own website, and third-party recruiters, headhunters. I think the big takeaway on this one is how exclusive this type of recruitment model can be, even if it's working. Who are you cutting out of the process, especially at a time when diversity, when inclusion are so important to company success, that that this could be eliminating people from the candidate pool before they even have a chance to step in the door. So something I think, anyone who has contact with businesses can help kind of elevate that point to them. And then why are these tools successful to them? Why do they see them as being most successful? Almost 60% of businesses said it was because it brought in the largest number of qualified candidates, but a third said it had to do with price, so it was the least expensive. And then almost a third said it was about bringing a diverse pool of candidates as to why those tools were so expensive. Also asked a number of questions about skills. And I think these, anecdotally, for all of us, will not be super surprising, but I think the scale that we saw really is. So we broke it up into non-technical skills and technical skills. So right now, what is missing most among people applying to your jobs and among your new employees that you have hired? So on the non-technical skill side, very clear here. So communication skills, self-motivation, problem-solving, critical thinking. I don't need to read through all of this. Timeliness, time management, ability to take criticism. All of these type of skills are ones that typically in the past we've never really funded training programs for. We have kind of thought them to be built into the K-12 training, to higher ed, to other type of traditional training programs. And very clearly businesses today are saying they are not seeing that come through. Either they just aren't being taught, people aren't able to articulate that they have them or demonstrate them, but there's clearly some kind of gap in training for these very important professional skills. On the technical skill side, Again, very clear winner here of digital literacy. So basic computer use, computer literacy, almost half of businesses identified this as lacking among job applicants and new employees. That's huge. That's problematic. Go down the list just a little bit more. Excel, Word, also related, right? Email typing. There are a number of, we asked some qualitative and questions as well in there, and really wanted to kind of dig in a little bit more. And it came up things like, young people especially saying they're digitally literate because they have a cell phone, but then you put them in front of a computer and they're struggling with basic typing because they don't teach that in high school anymore. Or they use free versions of, people learned on free versions of Google software, but then you put them in front of Excel or Word and they're struggling with certain commands that just didn't exist in the free version, but things like that. On the manufacturing side, a lot of mechanical skills, electrical skills as well, lacking for sure. But really, that any kind of digital skills, absolutely huge need out there, according to businesses. Then we kind of said, okay, of all of those skills, what are the most difficult ones to recruit for? And again, very high percentages on these. So problem solving, critical thinking, self-motivation, detail, timeliness, time management, leadership, communication skills. So again, professional skills, the things that we're not actively training for, we don't really like fund training programs traditionally for these type of things, in huge need out there, according to the business community. And I think it was really helpful seeing all of these, in black and white, to be able to kind of help elevate the conversation. And by the way, this type of message, we ran the business survey with the Business Council of New York State, and then went around and did regional presentations to a lot of chambers of commerce and the like. So we have been really trying to get the word out there quite a bit. This slide, I think, too, for all of us who play a role in our regional networks, helping people get jobs, helping businesses connect to people, there is a huge, huge need out there for better connections. So I call it the whole, workforce training ecosystem. So you have, obviously the K-12 system and the CTE programs that are just awesome, doing amazing things. You have higher ed doing a role, businesses, obviously, in government, we have a role, the private training providers, you have the partners in different communities, all of whom, lifting people up, getting them through the job search process, supporting them. So we ask businesses, great, of all of these key players out there, rank your level of relationships. And I'll stay on this slide, and I know the font's a little small, but I'll walk you through it. So along the left side of your screen are each of the different entities we asked businesses to rate. Then we asked them, we rated them. So the red shows no relationship, and the blue shows a strong relationship in your community. And I have to say, I think anecdotally we knew there was some really, really great examples out there of partnerships. I think what's lacking is, and businesses said this, the scale, right? So there may have been really good relationships in the past that may have devolved, may have just, people left, people get new jobs, right? It happens. So those relationships don't exist, or they exist really well, but only in a few examples. But at scale, half of businesses said that they don't have relationships with their four-year public school. A lot of them don't have relationship with their BOCES or their local community college. 60% have no relationship with their high schools or their local workforce boards. P-TECH programs, labor, 80% of businesses have no relationship with local labor unions and all the training and support that comes along with that. Or middle schools or libraries, the chance to really have an opportunity to influence young minds for career paths, for jobs in need today in their community, and businesses are not there. And I think even more telling than having no relationship is flip over to the other side of the screen on the right side, and the strong relationship is that only 11% of businesses said that they have a strong relationship with a 4 or 2 year college in their community, or a high school or middle school, or etc. So I think definitely there is a huge need for building, rebuilding, strengthening these relationships, and all of us have a role to play in that. An interesting follow-up that we asked to that was, when was the last time that you heard from a local training provider? So business, you're sitting there, when has a training provider called you? And 60% of businesses said that it was 5 years longer, or they've never heard from a local training provider. And I've sat across the table so many times, from labor, from education, from businesses, I can go on, everyone's like, oh, yeah, no one ever calls. And it's like, great. I guarantee that the phone works both ways. And if you pick up the phone and call, you're bound to have an open end on the other line with someone really interested in talking to you. And I think it's just the nature of everyone gets busy. We're doing our own thing. And the opportunity, I think, to make those connections is really huge. And probably now more than ever before, people are very interested in building those relationships. So that wraps up the business survey. And then it became very clear quickly after that that we needed to talk to job seekers too. So we did. Like I said, we heard from more than 4,100 job seekers. And again, very clear themes came out of that as well. So the desire and expectations of today's workers are just different. The dynamic between business and job seeker is changing. It has changed. I have said this for years. I don't know the level of, how permanent all of these changes are. But we've definitely seen a lot, and COVID definitely fast tracked many, many, many trends that we have all been seeing for years. What has staying power and what doesn't, we're going to be figuring out. I mean, like society wide, we're figuring this out. It's a national issue for sure. Part of that then goes into, I call it the industry redeployment. So people wanting to leave certain industries, wanting to get into others. We have some of those details as well on a couple slides. And then because people are probably changing, wanting to change careers, wanting to change industry, we have to get people skilled. So there was a skill gap before, there definitely is today. Businesses, obviously, you saw, have identified that, and job seekers are feeling the same thing. There's a need if you're wanting to stay and upskill within your existing industry or occupation, huge need for upskilling. If you want to change industry, reskilling completely. How do you take the skills you had, be able to talk about them to get a job, and then elevate yourself in a different type of industry? So interesting. Ask job seekers, so what kind of work are you looking for? Do you want to do what you did before, something different, maybe both? 30% said they were only looking to do what they did before. 14% said they were only looking to do something totally different. But interesting, about half said they were open to both what they did before or something totally different as well. Okay, as a follow-up, so maybe if you are looking for something different, why? And these reasons, perhaps not too surprising, more than half said that salary was the driving factor. They wanted to make more money, but nearly half said they were really seeking a different type of work because they wanted a better work-life balance. They wanted better hours or a better schedule, that there weren't openings for them in their community in the type of jobs they were after initially. So they're looking for something different. They wanted job security. They wanted a better work culture. So again, COVID health concerns as well. Again, it really gets to the changing desires and expectations of today's job seekers. And I think we've seen these trends for years, but definitely playing out a lot at scale. So here what we see, and I do have annotated just to help, but in industry, so the blue column is where did you work before? And then the pink column is, or the peach column is, where are you looking now? So industry to industry. And I do have a couple arrows that I put on here to kind of focus this because it can be big, but huge drops in retail jobs, huge drops in accommodation, food service, hospitality jobs, and then in other services, personal care services, nail salon, barbershops, that sort of thing. Then big increases in scientific, technical professional jobs, administrative jobs, waste management services jobs, healthcare, already a massive industry. Maybe not surprising, but more people wanting to get into healthcare, right? Perhaps shifting the type of jobs they're doing, but a lot of interest in getting into healthcare, which is great. And then also, far right of your screen, public administration, people wanting public sector jobs. So a huge, huge shift in the number of people wanting to get after public sector jobs out there. So then we said, okay, put aside salary. If you were to be offered a job, what would help you kind of really, really take that job offer today? And 60% of job seekers said, once you take away the dollars, flexible work. They want to be able, the ability to work on a flexible schedule. 40% said they wanted to be able to work remotely. That was important, certainly related to the flexibility. 37% said they wanted paid time off, or they wanted to have more paid time off. They wanted promotional opportunities, especially with young people today. We see this desire to see an articulated career path. So if I work for 6 months, a year, 2 years, 5 years, what are those next steps in my future? What do salary increases look like for me? What's my career trajectory? So a lot of people really having that desire out there. And then different subsidies, hiring bonuses, transportation subsidy, childcare subsidy, or retention bonus as well made the list of their desires. Then we asked, what type of barriers are you facing today in the job market? And it was interesting. I did not personally anticipate this because anecdotally, we've heard this for years about age discrimination, but I think especially today, as much has shifted due to COVID, the top answer, more than a third of job seekers said that age discrimination was playing a factor in their ability to get a new job. This, by the way, skewed over age 45, but 80% of people who answered this question representing that they felt discriminated against or had that perception were over age 45, but 25 or 20% were under. And a number of people, dozens of people who responded to this were in their 20s, saying they were feeling discriminated against because of age. So it definitely is across the board for sure. Then a number of answers, all of which are very related. So this is having the right degree, the certification, the credential, the skills, having modern skills, having experience, having the right kind of education or training, all of those very similar to everything else we've seen, that, getting to a qualified candidate out there, businesses saying they're having trouble finding it, workers saying these are things that are barriers to me. I need experience, I need skills, I need a certificate, those type of things. And then down the list, a number of other ones that lower percentages, but certainly ones that we've seen in the past: childcare, elder care, access to transportation as well. Then we said, okay, if we can get you connected into low cost or no cost training that's available, that's flexible, what type of training, job seeker, would you want today? And here are the results. So number one for businesses rather was, digital literacy as a skill being needed. And for job seekers, they identified that as the number one thing as well. So general computer skills is number one. Microsoft Office is number three. Go down the list: computer science, information technology, medical coding and billing, all digital skills that are lacking, that businesses identified, and job seekers saying we need them too. Then down the list a little bit more. So healthcare, a lot of people wanting to get into different healthcare training, nursing, again, medical billing, coding. So a lot of very related skills to kind of this narrative is abundantly clear, both from what businesses are telling us and from what job seekers are telling us too. Okay, so surveys in the past, so we're obviously trying to react to them and change how we do things and how we engage with people. So I want to just go through a couple more slides of some of the things you may be aware of, you may not be aware of as well, related to services that we provide here at the Department of Labor. So one of our things that we do is list jobs. So we have a record high number of jobs right now. Nationwide record job openings. In the state, obviously, we do as well. We have 215, give or take, thousand jobs available today in New York. They're everything from entry level to extremely qualified, hyper-specific jobs that we help list and can match people into. One of the things we do, because we had millions of people who are seeking or have been seeking work, we have access to their skill sets, to their credentials, that we can help businesses and nonprofits, anyone who's hiring, match against. So I'm looking someone with 2 years of experience in administrative work. We can then take a geographic net, figure out what they're looking for, and then blast out directly to those potential job seekers different job listings. And it's something that we do very regularly. We've been doing career fairs mostly virtually. As we look to the future, obviously, we'll be getting back into more of our in-person job fairs that we all kind of know, but we have had thousands of job seekers, and at this point, at least hundreds of businesses, it might be even thousands by now, of businesses take part in job fairs virtually. And it has been a really great tool and something we're going to be continuing into the future as well. Businesses don't have to leave the office. Job seekers don't have to leave home. We can make those kind of connections. They can do interviews right through the tool. And it's been a very powerful connection. And we have great stories of people who've been hired through those kind of connections, much like a traditional job fair. Also in the virtual realm, we've been building this virtual career center with a company called Eightfold, and they're an artificial intelligence based company, and they're incredibly powerful. Where I, a job seeker, upload my resume. If I don't have a resume, I can input the type of skills that I have or the type of experience that I have, and it will then help kind of tailor your kind of you telling your story and match you against available jobs. And it uses a lot of really great guidance technology. So if I worked in hospitality, it will say, here are certain skills that others who worked in this type of job have. Do you have these skills, right? So helping people kind of see in themselves those skills to help themselves market to potential businesses, both in their resume, virtually, and then as they're getting matched to jobs. So it's a really powerful tool. And then later this year, we're going to be turning that on for the business community as well. So being able to have businesses go in and say, kind of like what I described with the access to job seekers, in real time. So here's the job listing. If I choose, someone with 2 years of HTML experience, I go from, 10,000 people to 8,000 people. All right, what if I make it 1.5 years? And you can see those results in real time. It's a very robust system. It's something we're quite excited about, and something we'll be able to really kind of scale up. One of the things we rolled out very directly as a result of COVID and the changing nature of work and learning and access to skill training was Coursera. So for those of you who don't know, Coursera is an online training tool. They have like 80 million users around the globe. In New York State, we have more than 50, I think it's like 53,000 people who are actively learning right now on Coursera. Crazy number high, right? And we have found that while it can be very powerful, we've marketed to people as saying businesses need these skills. Here are courses you can take today on Coursera for free if you're interested in getting these skills. And right now, our program is for those who are unemployed or dislocated due to COVID, but many, many, many people fall into that category and have been able to take advantage of Coursera. But in addition to just gaining the specific skills, we've also marketed it as a career exploration tool. So someone can go in and say, I'm interested in the healthcare field. Let me go explore an EMT course. So you can go in, you're like, oh God, this is not for me. I'm so not interested in this. Traditionally, we have always kind of funded a full training. You go in day one. If it's not for you, it's like, sorry, we paid for it. You got to kind of finish, or it hurts our numbers or whatever. This is a very different model. This allows someone to go in, look around, say, oh my God, this is amazing. I love this. Or like, nope, not for me. But it also was a great refresher course for things like Excel, for some Google products, Microsoft products. It has a lot of really good courses for some of those soft skills, those professional skills that were lacking, time management skills, project management skills. So it's a really good tool that we have found quite useful for folks. And then another thing we've been doing is every day, at least once a day, sometimes more than that, we have virtual workshops, and I can send around some links after this too. But on our website, they're listed there. But it's everything from writing a resume to, where do you look for work to how do I best interviewed. All of those sort of details are there for people to go and hear about best practices. But then because it's a live virtual workshop, you can ask questions with the moderator. And we have lots of people taking part in these every day. And it's something we rolled out due to COVID and us having to do everything virtually. But it's been really powerful. And I think a lot of people have been able to take advantage of that. In addition, we also help anyone who's hiring folks access tax credits and different hiring incentives. So we make those connections. We'll look and see what might be available to you if you're hiring people. But this is something that can be a really powerful tool, especially today when you're looking for that extra kind of, thing to bring someone on board. Like, hey, wouldn't it be great if we can really help kind of make those connections. As well. We also are part of the Workforce Development Initiative, that $175 million fund that was launched a couple years ago. The second round came out 2 months ago in August, I think it was. We're part of that in the Department of Labor. We also work with SUNY and CUNY and Empire State Development to help attach, people, businesses, groups who would provide that training to dollars available to that. Through that fund. And if you or someone you know is interested in accessing those kind of funds, we can help point you to the resources, have you read through what's available, and or put you in touch with someone to kind of drill down on what might be available to you. Just last week, we rolled out or announced that we're going to be rolling out an expansion. You may be familiar with the Disability Resource Coordinator program. So of our 33 local workforce boards out there, about half of them had an individual hired who was an expert in serving people with disabilities. And we have announced last week that we're going to be now funding positions for the next 3 years for every single one of our local workforce board areas, which is pretty darn exciting. We're pumped about that. And really what we're seeing for this individual is, yes, being an expert, and yes, help overseeing our adaptive technology and all of our career centers, making sure people know how to use that, but also how do we kind of use a train the trainer model to help take their expertise and inform everyone in that network. So they're going to be doing things like hosting webinars and really sharing their expertise with everyone in our different networks. So that might be something of interest in the near future that you all may be interested in connecting into. And then as well, we have been at the Department of Labor a partner in the Gun Violence Prevention Initiative that was announced over the summer. So we have been funding a number of different programs in many different neighborhoods in cities hard hit by gun violence. Both, pretty much every major population center in the state, it has some level of funding, but I think it's over $20 million that we've put toward executing these programs. And already, even though we're early on in the program and it runs for the next, I think, about 10 months left in the program, we've seen some really good starts. And the object is, literally going into neighborhoods that are hardest hit, connecting people to training, and then ultimately to job placement, and then supporting them through that process, especially even as they're starting to work, getting them over the barriers that they face through those different processes. So very exciting there. Another thing you may already know about, may not, but I love to mention it, is that we have tons and tons of data out there around labor market trends, around what we're seeing around hiring data, around salary information. All of that can help influence a lot of different players in all the different all the different topics we talk about all the time. But we have a lot of data here, both things that we collect locally through the Department of Labor, but also on behalf of the Bureau of Labor Statistics nationally, that'll get rolled up into the unemployment rates and everything like that you see coming out every month. Also, in the very near future, sure you see on the news that the legalization of adult use cannabis has been rolling out. We have been playing a role at the Department of Labor, and definitely much more in the future, with how do we get people into those jobs? How do we forecast the jobs that are going to be available? We've been doing a lot of research, a lot of talking with other states around kind of how they rolled things out, pun intended, maybe. Haha, around how they rolled things out, around how they, really got people geared up for that, because it is a huge industry, and rarely do we have foresight to a brand new industry before it's even here. And we've been able to kind of take advantage of that, align different training partners, and that's something that we're going to be working on as well. one last point on this, and I promise I will stop talking. Thank you all for your attention. Is we want to be here as a partner, as a supporter of you, and obviously there are gaps out there in what we provide, what other agencies provide. We want to help align people to fill those gaps. If there are ways we could be helpful that we're not already being helpful, let me know. Let us know. I think we'd really like to be a resource to help, be part of the solution and kind of get things moving, especially with so much changing in the labor market out there today. We really see ourselves as being a big player in that, but only with your help, with your support, and your identifying where we can be doing more. So like I said, I will stop talking. Happy to take questions now from any of you. I know there were some things in the chat that I couldn't see, and I don't know if you want me to read them or if someone else wants to ask me questions, but up to all of you.
Chris, you could read them from the chat box. That would help. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, Mary Randall from Pathstone. Yeah, digital literate does not mean they have business skills. Absolutely. Free versions of software. Yeah, no, it's much more comprehensive than I think a lot of people realize. And I think when we talk about digital literacy, what does that actually mean? And I think there are a lot of different definitions of that. And I think especially industry to industry, that tends to really skew. So if you're in manufacturing, it's going to look one way. If you're in healthcare, it's going to look totally different way. Andrew, can we address new hires that ghost employers? Recently, yeah, noticed a trend of hiring employees who, I just lost that one, who work for a few weeks and then disappear, MIA, and then are forced to terminate them, file for unemployment. Yeah, no, it is definitely something we saw a lot before the pandemic, and something that we are seeing quite a bit of. What I would say is definitely if someone applies for unemployment and they've been through that, report it. We have been at the Department of Labor following up through our different systems on all of those different cases, and have actually been able to help out so businesses and organizations aren't getting dinged for that, because they certainly shouldn't be. I think one of the things we're talking about now is re-engaging with job seekers, especially to kind of dig in a little bit more as to why. I get crazy and like read all these studies and stuff, and you have like psychiatrists going in and psychologists like analyzing why people are doing this, and it's a million different reasons why that happens. But I think there are some ways we can help address that. So rather than kind of addressing the symptom, really getting to the problem. But I think that's there's a lot of societal questions. But are there supports we can put in place? Is it a child care issue that suddenly cropped up? Is it a financial issue? Is it a legal issue? Like what are some of those things? So one of the things we've been talking about is a follow-up survey to really dig in a little bit more with job seekers, because we had such a great response. Because I think having data has really helped us be able to tell a better story and make educated next steps as we look to the future. Thomas says, is there a specific reason that Coursera was chosen versus edX? Just curious. Honestly, Coursera, we explored a bunch of different tools. Coursera gave us a really good deal that they were in a place where they could offer us a very solid number of licenses and access, but partner with us to really kind of take it to the next level. I think there are a lot of really good players out there in this market, and it's certainly something that we're not saying they are the only one or they're the best one, but they're the one that we have found to be a tremendous connector, and they've been a great partner with us. And like I said, we know people are using it, and I actually, one statistic I should throw out there. So we have 50 some odd thousand people using it. Great. All right. So everybody just bought a license and like calling it a day. No, I've actually been able to track the number. We track everything in real time, but since the beginning of it, when we launched that last November, we've had 553,000 hours logged on the tool. Are people using it? Yes. So that's one of our big things, is kind of real, in real time, does this actually work? So let's see. I don't want to skip any here. What DOL program area department will the disability resource coordinator be under? It'll be under our existing, so we're going to be funding it through each of our local workforce areas. So it will be run locally, but overseen by our disability office, the folks who have expertise in that through our normal Division of Employment Workforce Solutions office. So not much will be changing in that. We're just going to be expanding the program. All right. Leslie says nonprofits like Community Action employ entry-level staff, train and development, and then they move to public jobs due to pay and benefits. We are an amazing training opportunity, and if there is a way we can get compensated for this while we wait more money, train and develop. Yeah, no, that's tremendous, Leslie. That I think any of those opportunities are great. We should see if there is funding out there for that to support different training opportunities. I think what you identify though is people coming in, working, and then going to a different job that can offer them more benefits, or something different. It's something that businesses, all industries were identifying. As we were going through the data, it cut across literally every single industry, saying the bigger company down the street was hiring people from me because I can't afford it. And it is, I think this has been a problem for forever. But one of the things we've talked about, and I don't have the answers necessarily off the top of my head, but one of the things we've been talking about is, what kind of creative things are we seeing, especially among smaller businesses, that have been really successful in retaining workers. I know they exist out there, but and maybe to all of you, if you're seeing really great things, how can we elevate those examples of things that small organizations are doing that are keeping people there? Like I said, I don't know this in my head, but I know they exist, and I think there are some really great stories to tell there. Maurice says, how can community colleges, SUNY CUNY, benefit from your survey follow-up? Great question. We have been actually engaging both SUNY and CUNY pretty extensively throughout the pandemic. We have a number of different initiatives in the works. CUNY rather, has actually partnered with us on Coursera, which is pretty cool. SUNY has partnered with us in kind of getting the word out around the different surveys. What we have done, so when we did some regional groups and actually invited SUNY and CUNY to them, and we'll be continuing to follow up. Really what it comes down to is, and we've already shared these results with both SUNY and CUNY, but really what it comes down to is helping to drill down, so you have an existing training program in X. How do you infuse into that training program a lot of those professional skills that we talked about? Not all of them, but how do you, teach people to talk about, so I'm learning about healthcare, right? How do you then bring into that a time management element and then teach people to talk about that so they can walk into a job interview and articulate, demonstrate that they have those kind of skills? So really being more of a holistic approach, because we've identified such a need and in great detail from the business community. There was a lot of interest from both SUNY and CUNY around the results and how they can better kind of spread that throughout their different networks. I think for any of us who touch anyone in those networks, and really anywhere, especially in the K-12 system as well, anytime we have a conversation, and I definitely try to do this as much as possible, I try to bring these things up and just kind of make it relevant, make it part of the topic du jour, and not let it fall down, because I think that's the really only way we move the needle, is just the continuous push of bringing these things up. Jeffrey says, how much of an impact was childcare on people not going back to work? Huge. It still is. It's still horribly impacting, especially the gender wage gap out there. I was one of the primary authors on the department's gender wage gap report a few years back, and seeing the statistics come through. They call it the she session. is awful. And it's not just women, men too, but certainly the burden has fallen. Statistics tell us to women just astronomically. We saw hundreds of thousands of women leave the workplace during the pandemic to take on that both childcare and elder care responsibilities, and it's been devastating. To be blunt. I think there are a lot of initiatives in the works. I think both at the federal level and at the state level, there's been a lot of talk about how we can better support the childcare system. It's not something I've been too intimately involved in, but I know that it is something that a lot of people have been talking about just because of how bad it's been. But yeah, it's been bad. Michelle, now that we know the reasons why people are leaving and not working, what are the solutions? Great question, Michelle. Yeah, so I mean, part of it, I think, is it's interesting because I talked to a lot of business groups around this, businesses directly, but especially business groups. There are business groups out there that are very interested in pushing their members to be more interested in understanding of the desires of today's job seekers. I don't think if there were a silver bullet to any of this, we would have done that already. So like I'll put that on the table. There's no one answer or even several answers. It's pretty much many things. And I think that it's interesting today when we have so much technology and we have like so much artificial intelligence out there, it still comes back to solutions probably as individualized as every person out there seeking a job. And so I think from a business perspective, it's not easy. I think businesses are working harder than they've ever had to before at attracting workers. And I think workers are working just as hard to try to get jobs. So I think everyone's working really hard. And I think it's about kind of understanding if I'm a job seeker, what are my absolute limits? And we talk about this with job seekers when we counsel them. What are my absolute limits, right? From a salary perspective, from a flexibility perspective, and then what's my wiggle room, right? And then you start with that kind of negotiation, or at least like as you're applying to jobs, what kind of jobs will I or won't I apply to because of that? From a business perspective, and I hear this again from the associations and from a lot of businesses directly, they're changing their business practices because of the desires of job seekers. Case in point, there's a large company that we work with that does plumbing, HVAC, that sort of thing in the state. And they have decided that they're going to be curtailing some of their emergency service responses. Not that they're not going to have it, but they're not going to do my third floor faucet is dripping responses at 3 a.m. They're going to do, I have a gas leak, right? But like that level of change was a huge fundamental shift in their business model, but it scored huge points with their workforce. Now, they're a progressive company, they're large, they can do that, but we see these things happening, and they're definitely happening more than they were in the past. So I think it's part of it's kind of a yet to be seen as to how far businesses are going to go to adapt. Obviously, a lot of folks need workers, and I'm seeing some really interesting things. There are hospitality employers who are offering benefits that they never in a million years would have offered before because they have no other choice now. And I think it is truly a global issue that I mean, I hate to say like, oh, it's like society-wide thing, but it is, right? Like it is impacting every single industry out there and thousands and thousands and thousands of businesses and hundreds of thousands of workers. And it will be a push and pull that we'll see, I think, play out. But I think for what we can actually do about it is help people be realistic about both their true, I can't make less than this, or I can't have less flexibility than this, and kind of how to back away from that. Just being realistic, both from an employer standpoint and from a job seeker standpoint. That was a great question. Any other questions out there? I think that was the last one on the list, and I'm sorry if I skipped any. I don't think I did.
I had two sort of questions, observations. I find it interesting that employees listed age discrimination as a hurdle to employment, yep, with no mention of gender or racial bias. Were those not given as options for the question?
No, they actually were. Yeah, as was disability. And that was also something that did not, I mean, I think each of those were so low on the list as they really were not statistically relevant. But that also intrigued me. I had anticipated that people identifying, having a disability would have been a barrier much higher, and it wasn't. Those definitely did surprise me in the statistics.
I'm a little too much of a pessimist to be happy about that new so-called skeptical.
No, I'm with you. I'm with you.
But I also found it interesting that employers, 9% said that the wages they were not offering were not high enough, and over 30% said that unrealistic wage expectations were a hurdle to hiring.
Yep.
One of those is wrong. And I do believe that low wages are one of the drivers of what we are seeing with the labor market.
Yep.
And since we are a policy council, we should be considering what we can do with respect to policy around CSBG to help the network retain and hire employees, be it setting a floor of a livable wage for the staff that we hire, or getting access to state benefits, health benefits, and retirement. I think it's something we should consider.
That's a great point. No, and I think it was enlightening for us. We have not, Department of Labor have not done a survey this extensive before, especially asking these sort of questions. And I think it really has helped us obviously be able to broadcast these things to as many groups as possible, but really to kind of reflect internally and say, are there things we're doing that exacerbate, that prevent, any progress on any of these initiatives? So I think it was definitely eye-opening for us to be able to kind of have that conversation, because we haven't before, based on actual data.
Okay, does anybody have any other questions or comments? Very interesting, very thorough. We appreciate it, and thank you very much.
Absolutely. And by the way, I'm happy to, there's a website that has all the survey data in it that I'm happy to circulate afterward if you're all interested in that. And that will give you a lot more than just what my slides had highlighted.
Oh, yeah.
That would thank you for that.
That'd be very good.
Done and done.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you again.
Thank you all very much. No, appreciate it. Thanks for what you're doing.
Thank you.
All right, take care.
Next, I'm going to introduce Manuel A. Rosa, Director of the Division of Community Services. He's going to give us some division updates. Manny?
Good morning, everybody. For the sake of time, and believe it or not, I'm going to be brief. Okay, so just a couple of things. I want to thank all the executive directors with whom we have met in the past couple of months on the one-on-one discussions. They've been very fruitful, very informative, and hopefully will inform us moving forward how to better serve the agency. So I want to thank everybody for doing that. In the spirit of workforce development, there are two things that have come up. One, we recently met with NYSERDA, who has, which basically has informed us that they will have a series of opportunities for workforce development, primarily in clean energy, internships, efficient heating systems, HVAC, and building operations and maintenance. And so as we get this information, we'll pass that along to the CAAs. They're interested in partnering with the CAAs to expand opportunities in the areas that they have, something like $100 million or so that they're going to be spending over the next couple of years on this. So there'll be more information on coming from NYSERDA specifically. I also want to inform the council that the 2022-2023 state plan was accepted by HHS on September 28, 2021. So that is in effect as of October 1st. And that will end on September 30th of 23. You may or may not know that the recent update from OCS is basically what we know, that there was a continuing resolution to which we are expecting some funding to come out of that based on 21 allocations. They have not sent us the notice of grant as of yet. But again, under the CR, the 200% FPL is in effect for both CARES and regular CSPG. But this is only to December 3rd. So there needs to be more action taken by Congress either prior to or by December 3rd for this to continue. So we're all waiting to see what's going on, but don't know. I want to remind everybody about the CARES amendments. If you need to do that, we have a hard date as of September 30th of 22 to spend the CARES dollars. That has not changed. I know that we have been receiving amendments to the work plans, and so that would be very helpful to make sure that if you need some assistance, please let us know. And also, I want to thank Jackie Orr and the representatives of the network that joined us. I think it was yesterday. I'm losing track of time, on the monitoring work group that we promised that we were going to establish as our first meeting was yesterday. It was very informative. It was a very, very good dialogue that I think is going to, moving forward, allow us to really take a very good look at how we monitor. Using Jackie's term, the holistic view. We're going to be starting with getting some feedback from the members as to some of the issues that they think we need to look at, and that's going to be very helpful, as well as looking at the monitoring guide to make sure that it is user-friendly. It's a good utilitarian tool. It's not just a bureaucratic document. So that will be the beginning of the journey. We're going to be meeting monthly, I believe, Jackie, at this point. And through at least hopefully through June, trying to make sure that we look at everything, including the continuation of the work on the tracks instrument, the across, and the GSCRs. So this basically is a result of what the September 23rd briefing that I gave to the network on the consumer satisfaction survey, where there were concerns about monitoring. And I think that by collectively looking at this, I think we can address some of the concerns that have been raised with consistency and clarity of messaging, and also to make sure that we're offering the proper training and assistance to make sure that everybody minimums that compliance, but also to help with work plans and also to comply with the mission of the SPG. So our next meeting will be in November, if I'm not mistaken, November 8th. That's it, Dennis.
Okay. Manny, thank you. Thank you, Manny. Does anybody have any questions for Manny? Okay, thanks again, Manny. We'll move along. Nicoletta Battistoni, Nick from
Nikki's fine. Thank you, Dennis. Oh.
I'm sorry.
Yep, Nikki is fine. Thank you, Dennis.
Okay.
I just have a quick update. DOS is taking a look at our training calendar for this year, 2022. We're trying to take a centric approach to DOS practices. So everybody should have already gotten a calendar invite or an announcement for a November 4th training. Fiscal will be presenting the unaudited financial statement training update process. We'll also be doing a language access training, a diversity inclusion training, fiscal best practices. And then if there are any other ideas throughout the network, please make sure that you share those through our shared mailbox, or you can email me directly as I'll be putting together the calendar. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you, Nikki. Anybody have any questions for Nikki? Thanks again. Luann Hart, Director of Financial Administration. Luann's going to give us some updates.
Good morning, everybody. I just wanted to based on Manny's presentation on the continuing resolution, US has not received our 2022 award yet. We expect it any day. When that happens, it'll take us a couple of days to get the money set up, and for the contracts that are executed, we'll be making advances in proportionate share to what we receive. We expect that to be in the neighborhood of 15%. Once we get the award letter, we'll know for sure. We will make those automatically based on the contracts that are executed, and we're working with grantees that have not executed their new budgets to get those completed. In addition, fiscal is now in the field and monitoring expenditures over the past year. So we'll be working with all of our grantees to review contracts and conduct further sampling for expenditures that were completed over the past year or so. With that, that's all I have right now. Do you have any questions for me?
Okay, Luann, thank you very much. We appreciate it. Next is Tina Zerbian and Jackie Orr, and they're going to talk about the Fatherhood Project.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, great. I'm hoping that you can all see the slides.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. Well, Jackie and I put together this quick little slideshow for you, and we wanted to talk about fatherhood across New York. And so I wanted to begin sort of with the roots of this endeavor to move fatherhood across the state. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about our 3-county pilot project that we just wrapped up on September 30th. So I also want to acknowledge that there's, Connecting Communities in Action is our organization, Chautauqua Opportunities, and DYCD and perhaps other community action agencies have been operating fatherhood initiatives for some time now. In our case, for about 12 years. So in Western New York, for example, Chautauqua Opportunities holds a federal contract, and they subcontract to CCA, our agency for services in Cattaraugus County. And in addition here, local DSS has funded the Fatherhood Connection for well over 10 years. So this pilot project aimed to examine how the Fatherhood Connection curriculum could be spread beyond the 2 counties and to research sort of the efficacy of this curriculum. Now, if you're federally funded or state funded, you're required to use an evidence-based curriculum. So we hope to begin the process to put the Fatherhood Connection curriculum in that category. So the 3 counties that were involved in our pilot project, in addition to us here at Cattaraugus County, we have Allegheny County, Accord Corporation, and Steuben with ProAction. So I guess that one of the questions that we'd like to pose is, why do fatherhood programs belong with community action? We believe that they do. And, fatherhood really is a 2-generation and a multi-generational approach to addressing the causes and conditions of poverty. So there's some things here on the slide that you can read, but I wanted to highlight that fatherhood involvement does have a direct link to their kids having better academic success, a direct link to their self-esteem, and a reduced contact with the criminal justice system. And then when you look at the impacts of fatherlessness on poverty, kids in father-absent homes are almost 4 times more likely to be poor, right? So that's why we should care. And fatherlessness also impacts mental health. We know that kids in single-parent homes are more than twice as likely to die by suicide and are also at much greater risk for drug and alcohol abuse. So those are some of the reasons that we believe that fatherhood programs belong in the Community Action Network. So a little bit about our local project before we move on to how we're moving this across the state. So our project in these 3 counties, we look to really create a sustainable, and I'll tell you how it's sustainable, and researched based initiative that engages men who are father figures in various roles. And we wanted to do a couple of different things that really stood out. So in terms of sustainability, we wanted to be able to train members of our own local communities to become certified as group facilitators using the Fatherhood Connection curriculum. And Fatherhood Connection, by the way, is a curriculum that's been designed by a gentleman named Reggie Cox, and you'll see a photo of him in a second. And we wanted to conduct a series of 13-week Fatherhood Connection groups. Initially, we proposed doing only 2. We ended up with many of these 13-week sessions across the 3 counties. We also wanted to make sure that we were engaging our local communities, people like social services and probation and the court system, for example, in supporting dads by making referrals to our program, providing wraparound services, those kinds of things. And I think importantly, we wanted to establish an evidence base. We wanted to examine a couple of different factors: improved parenting and co-parenting, improved employment and money management, and improved healthy relationships and family functioning. So to that end, we actually contracted with a professor at the University of Buffalo School of Social Work to work with us to establish that research base, and I'll talk about that in just a few moments. So here is a list of the outcomes that we hope to achieve. And so you can see we have for each of these milestones an annual target as well as the number that we actually achieved. So in terms of referrals, we targeted 40, we got 101. Participation in 13-week sessions, we targeted 30. We got 51 men who participated, 30 who graduated, and then almost that same number who did actually have improved healthy relationships, financial well-being, etc. Facilitators trained, we are still in the process of training facilitators. We do have 2 that are in the works. So we do know that we'll achieve that annual target, just not by the September 30th deadline. But the beauty of this is that we do have a number of people within the community that are absolutely dedicated to continuing this program beyond CSBG discretionary funding. Here's a photo of Mr. Cox. If you don't know Reggie Cox, you're really missing out. And when you meet him, you can't mistake his energy. So when we talk about the evidence base, we looked at, included in the evidence base were people from throughout Western New York that were participating in groups that Reggie facilitated, or that any of his co-facilitators or trained facilitators were also conducting. So we had nearly 100 men completing the surveys. Now, clearly not all of them were in our 3-county pilot project. I could spend probably hours discussing the research and its results, but we know now that involvement with the Fatherhood Connection does, in fact, have a positive impact on parenting and personal responsibility and financial well-being and so much more. But we do need to go further, and we need to see if the same results that we saw occur in other circumstances. So for example, if Reggie is not the person who is facilitating, will those results still be as strong? If we have other trained facilitators emerging in local communities, will they see the same results? And clearly in our 3-county area, we don't have the level of diversity that we might see in other areas. So we're hoping that we can continue some of this examination in other communities that have broader demographics, where in urban communities or suburban communities and BIPOC communities. So, but we do have extremely good results. And so this is exciting and gives us the opportunity to look at ways to expand. So moving beyond the 3 counties, we're grateful that fatherhood is now approved in the CSBG state plan. That's a huge step in the right direction. And just a little bit before I hand it over to Jackie, Reggie Cox became known to the Council on Children and Families, and they wanted to contract with the Fatherhood Connection program to begin to develop fatherhood initiatives across all of the economic development regions in New York. So initially, the Council on Children and Families wanted to use home visiting programs to do that. But, a few of us said, well, wait a second, you know, we've had great success as community action agencies in this pilot, in Chautauqua, in New York City, operating fatherhood programs. So why couldn't the backbone organizations in those economic development regions actually be community action agencies? And so that started the next level of conversation. And I will now turn that over to Jackie.
Okay, great. Thank you, Tina. All right, so we are now involved in the Fatherhood Coordination Initiative, and there are 10 backbone community action agencies representing each of the 10 regional economic development regions across the state, and I'll talk about those in a minute. But the contract got executed just a couple months ago. Funding is through the New York State Council on Children and Families. It does come from the New York B5 grant, which is what they call it, which is the Birth Through 5. And that's a grant that comes directly from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services through the Administration of Children and Families. It is 3-year funding. The first year has passed. We are currently in the second year, and then the funding will remain for a third year, which will end at the end of September in the federal fiscal year. As Tina's mentioned, the lead organization is the Fatherhood Connection. So that's a contract that just recently got executed. The objectives of the contract are, as you can see, to bring together fatherhood champions regionally. So those backbone community action agencies are in and of themselves the champions, but they are also going to be galvanizing other organizations in their communities. We're going to be identifying regional and statewide trends. We're going to be providing recommendations to support fatherhood program regionally and statewide. And then we're going to be conducting one annual statewide fatherhood convening both this year and next year. As Tina mentioned, it is modeled after the Home Visiting Coordination Initiative that did take place, I believe, in 2019. So what we are going to be doing, so Tina, move to the next slide and I'll talk. So these are the community action agencies that represent each of the economic development regions. So in Western New York, we have Accord. In the Finger Lakes, Community Action for Wyoming County. In the Southern Tier, Pro Action of Steuben and Yates. Pieces in the central region and pieces located in Syracuse. In North Country, St. Lawrence County Community Development Program, Mohawk Valley Community Action in the Mohawk Valley region. In the Capital District, Albany Community Action Program. In Mid-Hudson, we have Westchester Community Action Program, WestCOP. We've been in conversation with DYCD in New York City in representing that region. And then out on Long Island, we have the Economic Opportunity Council of Suffolk. And being the backbone, go back, you could stay at that slide. That's all right. Being a backbone organization, so I want to get into a little bit more detail on what our role is. So our role is going to be within our regions, each community action agency will be conducting a SWOT. And for those of you who don't know what SWOT is SWOT, is the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So we're really going to be looking at fatherhood initiatives in each region. So what is out there, what's not out there, again, what are the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats we can discover. We are going to be engaging and building partnerships with other organizations. And one of the results that's going to come out of this is that we are going to be actually developing a report. And what the Council on Children and Families is really looking for is for us to identify some priorities, both within specific regions, but also across the state around fatherhood initiatives. So what's kind of missing? What do we need to do? What are the priorities that we can take back to the state and say, this is what we need to do to impact fatherhood across New York? And it's really creating, as Reggie says, a movement. A fatherhood movement, and what I like to say, a fatherhood culture. So we're going to be looking at a fatherhood culture, certainly within our community action agencies and within these backbone agencies, but also across regions and across the state, what do fathers need and how can we best serve them. And as Tina was already very clear about, there's impacts on having involved fathers, very positive impacts, and very negative impacts on fathers that aren't involved and absent fathers. So with that, the last piece of what we're working on too is we did, and I was happy that Manny said that the state plan was approved. So that is good news. Fatherhood is noted as a priority to receive discretionary funding in the plan. So this is good. So we've been talking to Reggie about how, or not Reggie, we've been talking to Reggie too, but we've been talking to Manny about how this will look. And also, it just, and I was talking to Manny about this yesterday or the other day, it really provides an opportunity for DOS to connect with other state organizations, specifically in this case, the Council on Children and Families. We're working with a woman named Kristen Weller, and Manny and Kristen and Reggie and a couple other people, a gentleman from OCFS, were a part of a session that we had at the Niska conference a couple weeks ago. So we could see there's already some collaboration between DOS and Council on Children and Families and OCFS on how we can move fatherhood across the state. And then we're also talking about specifically how do we use that additional funding to initiate and support fatherhood programming within our backbone organizations, because those backbone organizations are sort of, as you would imagine, in different places in their journey to the fatherhood movement and changing the fatherhood culture. So some of them are further along than others. So we're looking on how we can use some DOS and CSBG funding to support this effort. So that's it. Does anybody have any questions for Tina or myself?
Yeah, it's Maureen. I had added just a question about how were the backbone agencies chosen?
Oh, Tina, do you want to take that? I don't remember having a recollection.
I think that we tried to identify agencies that had already been operating some fatherhood programs or locating engaging father, toolkit, or dads take your kids to school sort of initiatives in each of those areas.
Sure.
And that had a little bit of experience. And for some areas that did not have the experience, it was just sort of people who had expressed an interest. I don't know if it came up at an ED conversation on a Thursday morning or whatever it was. People who expressed an interest in learning more. I know in the case of Peace, and I don't know if anybody from Peace is here, they actually sent some folks to our facilitator training. So did Wyoming Community Action. So I think that it was a level of expressed interest or experience.
Yes, and also the capacity to work within the region. Thank you, Tina, because some of those agencies had expressed an interest, but the capacity to work beyond your county, because it will be when we're looking at the economic development regions, it's, they're within the region, there's several counties, sometimes 6, 7, 8, or 9. So the agency will not only work, the backbone organization will not only work within their specific county, but also, to build relationships with other community action agencies, with other partners, other community-based organizations within that region.
And I would just add that if folks are interested in starting a fatherhood connection program or something similar to that, our commissioner is kind of a role model in how that can be done. He is using FFS funding to support our fatherhood initiative here. So that's something that if you have an interest, we can help you make those connections.
Okay. And he was a part of that panel at the Niska conference, Tony.
Okay, any other questions I see somebody raising their hand. Go ahead.
We can't hear you.
You must be muted. We can't hear you, the person that raised your hand. Are you muted? Yeah, you're.
You can chat in.
He probably doesn't have the equipment to chat in. There's no laptop or whatever. So
They're
Oh,
using
okay.
the video conference software. So if you
Yes.
look on the table, there should be a little tablet-looking device, and in the lower right-hand corner, there's a button. If you press on that, puck there, and it's green. Okay, it looks to be green. I don't know why they're muted. I'm sorry, everyone.
Oh, I thought I heard some.
If some of yours are here.
So maybe Dennis, they could send an email to Manny after the meeting, and we'll be able to answer it.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion. If they can hear us, they can send an email to Manny and he can forward it to you and you can give an answer.
This is Susanna. He's here in the Buffalo office. I'm going to just go run over there and see if maybe he can come to my desk and talk to you guys and give the question. Okay.
So, if I'm not mistaken.
In the meantime, I saw another gentleman raise his hand. No? Okay.
I have a brief comment. It's Mike.
Okay.
I'm using my phone, so I didn't raise my hand. But I attended Backbone Organization for the New York City region. I attended a recent meeting, and I saw the work product that was referenced by Tina in her presentation for the New York State Council. It might be useful to circulate at a later point for this group so they can see the results of the prior SWOT analysis that was done regarding childcare. That's the eventual work product that will be asked related to fatherhood. I found that clarifying and helpful, and I'm looking forward to what this group will generate in terms of the SWOT analysis for fatherhood in the state of New York.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. Is there anybody else with any questions or comments? Should we?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Okay. First of all, can you please mark me as attending the meeting, Miguel Santos out of Buffalo? It's been a very chaotic, but I am super, super interested in this program. Some of the questions that I have has been answered, but I'm going to give you what I wrote on my slip of paper. How do men get referred, and under what circumstances would they be referred? Some of that was answered by the different court systems and so forth. And may I also suggest maybe some referrals can also come from Catholic charities. Facilitators. I'm in Erie County. I am super interested in training in the facilitators training. I can also then be able to assist with the Spanish-speaking population, not only in Buffalo, but also in Dunkirk, which Dunkirk is 2/3 Spanish. So I thought that might be of great interest. As you may already know, Western New York, in particular Buffalo, and maybe now Niagara Falls, have been and will continue to receive a large number of refugees. In my church, I'm also a minister. In my church, many of the fathers end up in problems in the family court system because of the different type of rearing children. We need to educate these fathers on what is permissible and not permissible here in New York and the USA. So that is something that we need to look at. In addition, looking at all the chemical dependencies among our native population, we too should take a look at how this fatherhood program can be implemented in the agencies that work with our Native American fathers and, if possible, the Native American reservations, of which we have several. Let's see. Okay. I didn't see, does Western New York encompass also the Finger Lakes, like Rochester and Geneva? That's everything that I wrote on my slip of paper here.
I wouldn't mind taking a stab at answering some of your questions, Miguel. Hi, by the way, haven't seen you in a while.
Hi.
In terms of referrals, dads are referred in lots of different ways. Some of the referrals are word of mouth. For example, if we have a dad that comes to group and maybe graduates from a group, he might be bringing back his friends or his father in some cases. Some of the referrals do come from the Department of Social Services, Child Protective Services, and some of the referrals come from probation. We do operate Fatherhood also in the local jails. Now, right now, because of COVID, we're on hiatus, but that is that's a good referral source, obviously. And it also really helps in terms of connecting folks back into the community when they're ready for reintegration. We absolutely do get referrals from Catholic Charities, from the court systems, and you spoke about Native populations. We also here in Cattaraugus County, we also have a connection with the Seneca Nation, so we provide fatherhood groups on the Allegheny Territory as well. In terms of you becoming a facilitator and having an interest in that, I would be delighted to set you up with Reggie Cox if that's something that you want to pursue. Happy to make that connection for you, Miguel. Western New York's backbone is Accord, and they'll be working with Allegheny, Cattaraugus, Chautauqua, Erie, and Niagara. So it does not include the Finger Lakes. And anybody else want to take a stab at any of those responses? I agree, in terms of the refugee population, that would be a fantastic new way of helping them to integrate.
I am currently the chaplain at the holding center in Erie County. So I'm happy to hear that that is one of the avenues, and I would like to explore making sure that the men that end up incarcerated at the county jails, that I mean, obviously that's a great avenue for additional referrals. But I'm not lazy. I am super interested in this project, and would welcome the opportunity to speak with Mr. Cox, especially because he's at UB, and explore how we can expand this extremely important program. That's all I have. I'm going to move to another desk, apparently, okay?
Yeah, I'll make that connection for you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Thank you to Tina and to Jackie. Very, very informative. I appreciate it. Next is going to be Jackie again. She's going to give us some Niska updates. Jackie?
Okay, great, Dennis. Thank you. And I believe all the council members have received the report that I typically do. So I won't go through all of the pieces. I just want to bring a couple things to your attention. We've been spending time on our e-learning course. So Niska has a e-learning platform on our website. So we have 8 courses that are currently now for all community action agency staff to be able to, take the courses. So there's courses from cybersecurity all the way to Roma, results-oriented management, and accountability, and sort of everything in between. So we're working on a couple now that will be completed by the end of the year. One is the community action plan. We've been working with DONR back in the beginning of the year, helping agencies and revisit their community action plan and how they develop their plan. So we received overwhelming positive feedback from that. So I've been working with Jessica at DOS, and we've been working on putting together with a group of community action agency staff who have been absolutely amazing. We've been working on putting together community action plan templates for the community action agencies to use and when they put their plan together. So in other words, if you have a Head Start, we're putting together a template that you can use as you build your community action plan when you work on when you do your contract with the Department of State. So we've had some very positive feedback from that. And then we're moving that into an e-learning course where we're walking through how to build your community action plan. And it'll be interactive, so folks will have an opportunity to put together a plan. That will be done by the end of the year. And then we're also working on a e-learning course about ACEs. And we have, as some of you may know, because I've mentioned in the past that we have certified ACEs trainers, master ACEs trainers here in New York State. So there's 3 of them who have decided to be generous enough to be able to present the specific modules for that. So we're putting it together so folks, when they enter the course, will be able to listen to a piece of the training and then have an interactive exercise and then listen to another module of the training and have another activity and then listen to the final module. So we wanted to make it more than just sitting there and listening to a webinar where we're actually engaging the learner and they're able to do some interactive activities. We should have that one done by the end of this month. Right now, we have about 1,500 folks who are what we call Niska Learn users. So that means those 1,500 people have come in and have taken at least one of our 8 courses. Let me see what else I wanted to talk to you about. We continue with our Roma Alliance and our peer group listservs. So we have affinity groups made up of specific roles in community action agencies. We have finance, HR, IT, and then also groups that have the databases Captain and Cap 60. We've kind of re-energized, I should say, the finance and HR groups. So we have a distribution list so folks can email each other, and if they have a question, oh, I have a question about this, how can you help me? Or I have a question about this, or I want to share this resource. And that's been very valuable for the network. And for the finance and HR folks, they were meeting a lot last year. And now they're starting to meet again. The HR group is meeting every month, of course, remotely. And the finance group has decided that they want to meet quarterly. And we're looking at offering some professional development opportunities for those groups. More recently, we just completed our annual conference. So every year with the New York State Weatherization Directors Association, we hold a conference. This was our 2nd virtual conference. So of course, last year we had to do a virtual one. We were hoping we were going to be in person this year, but when we had to start planning early in the spring, we realized that we were probably best to hedge our bets and do something remotely, and I'm glad we did. So we held it just last 2 weeks ago, maybe October 6th and the 12th and the 14th. We had about 250 people attend. We had 3 keynote speakers and 19 sessions that Niska was able to coordinate. We received some really positive feedback about the conference, and I'm going to read you one for those of you who haven't seen my report. And we just received this the other day, and this was a comment. The conference was one of the best virtual experiences I have ever had. You all did a tremendous job. The session topics complemented the wonderful platform, and it truly was a fabulous experience, almost better than in person. I was able to get more info in the least amount of time. So that was nice to be able to hear that. I'm still hoping in 2022 we could go back to an in-person conference. We completed our Emerging Leader Institute. We have, we call it ELI. Every year we have emerging leaders apply to be a part of the Institute. It's 2 years. If you want, you can do it in 1 year. If you stay for a 2nd year, every community action person who's a part of ELI for the 2nd year, we call it ELI 2.0. They engage in a project within their agency. They follow the Roma cycle and they identify a need and they plan the project and they implement the project and then they evaluate the project and then they have the opportunity to present their project to the emerging leaders in their 1st year. So we had our 3rd seminar in September where the emerging leaders in the second year were able to present their projects, and that was a very positive experience as well. We completed our we have an executive director CEO seminar, and that was just finished that last week. That was 2 days of the executive directors getting together. We were also able this year to do it in person, but also remote. So we now have the technology to be able to do it, to do a hybrid. So that was a good experience, and I think we will continue to use that technology as well. The last thing I just want to mention is we received CARES funding from the Department of State as well. These activities are specifically to prepare for, prevent, and respond to COVID. We've been working with 2 professors at UB who also have their own consulting company, and they've been providing motivational interviewing, a 10-week course for community action agency staff who are interested. We've had overwhelming interest. We did 1 cohort in the fall or winter, I guess, and we just started a second cohort last month. So the cohorts are 20 each. So by the time we get done here, 40 folks in community action agencies will have been trained in motivational interviewing. Then we take part in a learning community for folks who have finished that course. And we've also had the opportunity to hold a series of network-wide webinars related to COVID-19. So we held 6 of them. They were really well attended by the network. We did everything from helping people manage stress associated with the pandemic to, carrying equity in COVID-19 forward, health disparities and distrust in communities of color. So we did a series of 6. We just finished, I think the last one we did was in September. So we're taking a pause, and we're going to be doing another series in the beginning of 2022. So we'll be looking to do a series in probably February, March, and April. And then finally, Niska is the lead for Region 2, the federal Region 2, which is New York, New Jersey, and Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands. So one of the things that we need to do in this last year of a 3rd-year grant is hold a regional convening. So highlighting some of what we've been calling human capacity and community transformation initiatives across the region. So that's going to be held virtually on February 15th. We were able to get Dr. Howard, Laniqua Howard, who's the new director at the Office of Community Services at HHS. She has agreed to provide opening remarks. So we're really pleased that she's going to be able to join us. We continue to hold regional webinars, and we work really closely with the New Jersey and Puerto Rico associations. We get together every month and look at what the regional needs are. What's been nice is that the Puerto Rico Association was without an executive director for almost a year, and they just hired someone in April or May. So she's been wonderful, and she's brought life back to the Puerto Rico Association. There's 4 community action agencies in Puerto Rico, so she's been now working and providing some training and technical assistance to those agencies. So I think that is it, Dennis.
What is the name of the lady in Puerto Rico, please?
Normary Silva. I can send you her address if you'd like.
Yes, please. Thank you. I plan on going to Puerto Rico, so I'd like to make a visit.
She would love that, I am sure.
Thank you.
Okay, Jackie, thank you very much. Anybody else have any questions or comments for Jackie? Okay, thank you. Is there any old business?
Hey, Dennis?
Yeah, we got a quorum.
I believe we have a quorum, so if you wanted to have the approval of the minutes.
Let's do it.
We can do that.
Yep, let's get a motion to approve the minutes from the 5:20 and the 7:29 meetings. We'll do it all in one fell swoop if that's okay.
This is Jeffrey Lewis. I make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Okay, is there a second to that motion?
Mike Bobbitt, DOICD, seconds the motion.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on the minutes, any corrections or comments? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. Anybody opposed? Abstaining? Motion carried. Thank you, everybody. Thankfully, we did get a quorum also. Now, is there any old business? Any new business? It appears that the next meeting is yet to be determined. So everybody will get notified when that's upcoming.
Thank you.
At this point, I'd like to, before asking for an adjournment, I'd just like again to thank everybody that showed up and especially thank all the presenters. It was very valuable information, everybody that was here. So at this point, I'd like to ask for an adjournment, a motion to adjourn.
Tina Zerbian, so moved.
Okay. Charlie, are you the second?
Andrea Ogunwumi seconds.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
Aye.
Abstaining? Motion carried. We'll see everybody in the future. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye.
everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Take
Great
care.
information.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Yeah, they show.